G'day guys, I'm down here at a river in Western Sydney today, and I'm not actually down here to fish. I'm here to test out some gear. This is my new Euro rod. It's a Hanak Superb XP 396. It's a 9'6" 3-weight, and it's a primarily a Euro nymphing rod. But I'm going to be trying something a little bit different with it today. I like to, when I go out and fish on the river, I like to be as versatile as possible and try to be able to cover as many different scenarios as I possibly can. So a lot of you will probably know that with a Euro nymph rod you can put a standard dry fly line on and fish little dry flies and so on, and this rod does that very nicely. You can make a lovely sort of 75 or 80 foot cast with a presentation dry fly line on this, and it just works beautifully. But I'm trying something different today. What I have got on here is a OPST Commando head, an OPST Commando Smooth actually, which is an integrated line. It's a very, very short Skagit head that's quite powerful and short. So the idea is I want to see if I can cast streamers and some bigger flies on this little 3-weight 9'6" Euro nymph rod. Anyway, that's what we're here to find out. Let's check it out. My first impression casting this is, wow, I didn't know you could do this on a 3-weight. It feels fairly effortless to cast. And with a Skagit head, you need to strip back all the running line to the beginning of the head before you can cast. If you try to do it with too much of that orange running line hanging out, the cast will fail. If you haven't seen single-handed spey casting before, it's basically a more developed version of the roll cast, which allows you to load the rod better and also to reposition the line and change the direction of the cast. It's an incredibly useful technique if you're fishing in places where a back cast is difficult, like a tree-lined bank or somewhere you can't wade out far into the river. It's also really enjoyable and relaxing. The casting stroke is fairly slow and smooth, and when it all comes together, it takes very little effort. Skagit is a style of spey that uses very short, heavy spey heads and uses the water as an anchor to help the cast. It was designed originally to cast heavy sinking tips and flies for salmon and steelhead, but in recent years OPST has started making these smaller micro Skagit lines to apply the same principles to fishing for trout or smaller species on lighter rods. It's really useful to watch yourself back on video, and I can immediately see some problems with my casting here. On my initial setup sweep, I need to be dropping that rod tip much lower to the water so that I can set up a nice ascending sweep into the D-loop at the back of my cast. I'm sure my casting instructor must be cringing looking at this, as I am, but the point is, you don't have to be perfect to get it to work. Well, I must say, it's pretty impressive what this system can do. This is about a 2-inch streamer with weighted bead on the front in rabbit fur, and it's casting that with absolutely no trouble whatsoever. I've got a 5-foot sinking tip on here at the moment. You get interchangeable tips with these systems, so this one's a sinking tip. You can get intermediate ones, fast sink, float, between that sort of 5-foot and 7.5 foot range. Fairly light for this setup, obviously. I haven't actually got anything bigger or heavier than this in my fly box, but I'm pretty sure that it would cast a larger, heavier fly than this with no trouble in the world. I'm really impressed. It's effortless to make a cast of sort of 50, 55, maybe 60 feet. And the amount of power in this head is unbelievable, really, considering this is a 3-weight rod. It's because there's so much weight in the front of the head and it's a relatively short head, so it's got an enormous amount of power to turn over flies. You can overhead cast it. I wouldn't say it's ideal for overhead casting, but it's certainly got lots of power. What you have to be mindful of, I suppose, with this head is just not to overpower the cast. You can do touch and go Scandi style casts with it, such as a single spey or a snake roll with no trouble at all. although I do think it's probably a bit better suited to the Skagit style waterborne casts. You know, your snap tees, sea spays, those kinds of things, just work beautifully. You need to, you know, consciously cast quite slow with this. It's such a powerful head that if you try to go too fast, you can overpower your cast relatively easily. So you just got to go slow and smooth, and it makes for really quite effortless casting and fishing. It's great, considering, you know, this is a 3-weight Euro nymphing rod, and I can go out and cast relatively large weighted streamers on it, 50 or 60 feet with no trouble at all, and swing down and across. I think it's just a fantastic string to have to your bow. It's a way of making these rods a bit more versatile and able to cover a lot more different situations than you can with just a Euro rig. So I'd highly suggest, you know, give it a go. I think this system is fantastic. I got the integrated version of the Commando head, so as you can see, there's no loop-to-loop knots or anything there that are going to run through your guides. The only loop-to-loop is on the tip, which is probably the 5-foot tip that goes down to your leader, so that's very rarely going to go through your guides. Yeah, fantastic system. I'm really happy with it. I'm going to try a couple of different tips now. I've got a faster sinking tip and I've got a 7.5-foot float tip, so I'm going to see how those cast. Alright, let's try the 7.5-foot floating tip now, see how that goes. With the floating tip on this line, it feels a lot more like a Scandi line to cast. It's more graceful and a bit easier to shoot line, although it perhaps doesn't have the power of the sink tip. With a Skagit line like this one, you need to use different tips on the line to get it to cast properly. They have a small loop connection on them to connect to your Skagit head, and then another small loop to connect to your leader. These heads can be used to get the fly to the desired depth that you want to fish, and it makes this whole system very versatile. If you think the fish are down deep, or you're fishing a deep pool or fast water, just loop on your full sink tip and it'll get the flies down there. If you want to fish an indicator nymph rig or a dry dropper, you would choose the floating tip. Or if you want to swing some soft hackle emerges just under the surface, you might choose the intermediate sink tip. It's quick and easy to change them over as you're fishing. You could really fish just about anything on this head, except for maybe big heavy weighted streamers, which would require a heavier Skagit head on a higher weight rod. But any small to medium streamers, nymphs, soft hackles, or even dries are all fair game on this system. And it doesn't have to be fished down and across either. You could fish it upstream, across stream, any way you want. It just works. If you want to find out some more about single-handed spey casting or spey casting in general, I can highly recommend the Rio series of videos by Simon Goresworth. He's an excellent teacher and explains things really, really clearly. So if you want to learn more about it, the technique in particular, go and learn from him. Learn from an expert, not me. I'm not an expert. But I highly recommend you give it a go. It's an awful lot of fun, and it's not that hard. Well, there you go, guys. I must say, I'm super impressed with this system. It's just so much fun to cast. And, you know, if you were looking for a way to make your Euro rod so much more versatile, then this is sure a way to do it, you know. So, this is the line that I was using. This is the OPST Commando Smooth, 150 grain, which is a 3-weight. I'm casting it on the Hanak Competition Superb 396. It's a 9'6" 3-weight Euro nymph rod, and I've got the Hanak Superb XP 3.5 reel on there as well. Now, I'm just going to show you what I do. So I carry a couple of spare spools with this. So I've got this spool which has got my Commando Smooth on it, which is the spay line. I've also got another couple of spare spools that I'll take out with me. One of them is a normal dry fly presentation line for the evening rise, or if there's fish rising and I just want to cast dry flies, then I can switch over to that and cast dries on it beautifully. And the other one is my Euro-Nymph rig that I've got set up with a Euro-Nymph line and you know, the full leader indicator, all of that sort of stuff. So that's a really versatile system, and that's something that really appeals to me. When I go out fishing for a day, I don't necessarily want to do the same thing all day. So I wouldn't necessarily want a Euro-Nymph for a whole day. I might want to throw some dry flies, I might want to swing some streamers. And I think with those 3 lines, you can cover just about anything that you're likely to want to do on a trout stream. I'm sure that this spay line would throw a larger streamer than what I've got on there with no trouble at all. It's really interesting that this is a 3-weight rod, but it'll throw such a large fly quite easily. And it's all because of the line design. You know, having that incredibly short, powerful Skagit head means you can throw much bigger stuff than you would normally be able to throw on a 3-weight. Another thing I wanted to say is I'm no expert on spay casting. I've been doing it for, I don't know, maybe a year and a half now. So I'd say, I guess I'd call myself an intermediate level spay caster. I'm not an expert. There are people out there who are way better at it than I am. But what I wanted to say is, don't be scared off by these spay casts. They might look sort of complicated or difficult, and you might think, oh God, I could never do that. But it's really not that hard. You know, it's not that difficult. If you want to learn it, you need to have the right line above all else to be able to do it. And then get a lesson or two with a good casting instructor. You know, I can think of at least a couple around Sydney who I know are really good. You know, you've got Peter Morse, or you've got one, Del Carmen at Advanced Fly Fishing School. I'm sure there are others as well. But get a good instructor, have a lesson or two, and you'll be away. It's not that difficult to get started, and once you learn how to do it, it's an incredibly useful technique that'll just open up so many more possibilities for you on the river. So get out there and give it a go. I hope you enjoyed this today, guys, and I'll try to bring you a more detailed review of this whole setup of the rod in particular, and the reel and the lines, once I get a chance to get out and fish it on proper trout water, which I can't wait for. Thanks, see you next time.